Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Let's go around and introduce our very first name. I'm Paul.
I'm Bob. Gerald. I'm Dan. Darren. Jack. Todd.
Peter. Jonas. Mom.
Kay.
Steven.
Tommy.
Bob.
I'm Carl Lasagna.
I'm Lucas. Steve.
Peter. Tim.
Kurt.
Lee. Ted. Greg.
Clint.
Paul. Michelangelo.
David.
Ed.
And how many are here for the first time? Welcome. Our speaker today is Roger Corless, a.k.a. Dharma Daddy. And most of you know him. He's former professor of religious studies. Was that the department?
We called it the Department of Religion.
Department of Religion.
We had long discussions over its name.
Yeah. At Duke University. So anyway, he's retired and here with us now to give us his wisdom on occasion on Sunday mornings. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. And if I put the clock here, I can see it. Is this the most light we can get out of these lights? Because I'm going to also have something to hand out. I'm going to talk from a text. And I certainly, that's much better. Thank you. I've got quite a few here because I'm giving a repeat performance at the other group at Gay Men's Buddhist Sangha this afternoon. So let's see if that's enough to go around. It won't be the same talk, so if you want to hear it again, you're welcome to come back at 3 because I'll say something different.
Is that here, Roger, or is that at Hartford Street?
It's at Hartford Street Zen Center now. Yeah, they've been moving around.
At 3 o'clock.
Yes, it's at 3. Apparently it's a much smaller group, and although apparently they split off from us to get more organized, apparently now they're just as disorganized as we are. So,
Accomplishment.
yes. This is because a lot of us say, I don't like organized religion. And I say, oh, you love the GBF then. Oh,
You've got to take one more side.
so it's a single sheet, and does everyone have one? All right. And I will have to put on my other glasses. I am not becoming completely blind, but my eyesight is certainly deteriorating. And so that's probably a good thing, because I've read a lot of books, and now I have to speak from a different level as the blind prophet. I'm not yes. Also, I heard on NPR this morning that now they've, just in time for the holidays, scientists have discovered that lighted candles and incense produce harmful carcinogens. So, what next? Eventually they will discover what the Buddha said, that the problem is birth. If we have been born, the prognosis is bad. Today I want to talk of this short text, which you have before you. It is something that can be discussed at great length, and I'm going to try to keep within the time limit here. it doesn't take long to say if you want to incorporate into your daily practice, which is what I do. But it can be expanded, and you can say it quickly, or you can say it slowly, and then you can go into it in detail. And then if you go on to any other practices in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, you'll find that this is a very good foundation for that, because it's a summary of all of those things. It's called the 7-limb or 7-branch prayer, and I had copied this out from a book many years ago, and of course my professorial imperative was to find the reference, and I can't. It is I think one of the Nalanda translation committee works. I have another version from the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, which is not as good, and I'm not sure. I thought there was only one. A bit late in the day, I managed to email to Judith Simmer Brown at Nalanda, and she says, "Oh, we've got many versions. Which one is it?" So I sent her this, and I can make an announcement maybe in a newsletter, which it is if you really want to know. But it reads well in English. So the 7 limbs or branches refer to the 7 aspects, the 7 parts of the Tibetan practice in the Sutra tradition. This doesn't refer to the Tantra or the Vajrayana tradition. So what I'll do is read each of the verses and give a short commentary on each as I go. I've put in these 7 headings to make it clearer what is going on. They were in the original text. So, the refuge and, yes, certainly. The refuge and prostrations. With complete faith, I bow to all the victorious ones and their children who abide in the 10 directions and the 3 times. All Buddhist traditions start off with the taking of refuge, and this is taking of refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. In the Mahayana tradition, the Buddha is often regarded as something in the plural. All of the Buddhas of the past, present, and of the future. The phrase here is the victorious ones, which translates one of the titles of the Buddha, the Jina, the victorious ones. And the word faith shouldn't be misunderstood. It doesn't mean a blind faith. It's more like trust, that after having listened to the Dharma for some time and inspected it and tried it out in one's own life, one has discovered that the teachings are reliable. And so it's something like finding a friend who will tell you certain things, and you find out that the friend is reliable, that they're not lying, and that they will do what they say, and then you trust that in something that is new to you, that they tell you something, that it will also be reliable. So that's what's meant by faith in the Buddhas, not that I will have faith no matter what they do, but that I have discovered over the time that the Dharma is working in certain parts, so then in the other parts that I don't understand, I presume that will also be effective. The victorious ones and their children. The normal term is sons, Buddha's sons, which just means disciples of the Buddha. There really is no Buddhism, or there wasn't any Buddhism until it came to the U.S. In the U.S., we have a situation where, a social situation, where religion is a special category with protection from the law and the tax laws, especially freedom of religion and freedom from taxes. So if something is a religion, it has a certain special status which is advantageous to it. And so things become religions when they come into the U.S., even if they were not beforehand. Judaism is, I think, the classic example. Of course, when you get two Jews, you have three opinions on this matter. But whether or not Judaism is a religion is discussed endlessly. Certainly it has religious aspects, but in the U.S., if it's regarded as a religion, it has certain advantages, and that's also happened to Buddhism. But a more traditional way of seeing Buddhism is those who follow the teachings of the Buddha. So the sons and daughters of the Buddha, those of the Buddha, and one bows down to them as they exist in the 10 directions and the 3 times. The 10 directions is just a way of saying everywhere. It's the 4 cardinal points, the 4 intermediate points, up and down. So it means everywhere. 3 times are past, present, and future. Time and space are conditioned realities. We live in a particular time and space which more or less works according to the laws discovered by Newton. It's sort of what I call the Newtonian Cartesian continuum, or Cartesian Newtonian, because he came first, I guess, continuum. And it is our reality. It's not an illusion. But it might not have been, and in different rebirths, it's not. So when we take the larger view, we see that the future is already here in some way, that the past is already here, as the present is already here. Don't need to get too confused about that. But just to say that we are making reverence to all those who have done their practice and gone further than we have. And when we do the visualization in full, we either physically do the bowing. It's something that Buddhists do a lot. I was on a review board recently for an interfaith temple, and I was to say whether the space that was proposed could be used by Buddhists. And Christians, especially Orthodox Christians, had very specific things, and Jews had other things, and Muslims. And I said, what do Buddhists need? I said, all Buddhists need is a place to bow. As long as you can, that's what Buddhists like to do, a lot of bowing. Don't do too much in the Western Buddhist tradition. We do a lot of sitting, but a lot of bowing. Because we say, well, I'm not as good as them as yet, but not that I'm hopeless, but I'm trying to get there, so I want to reverence what is the ideal. And so then we can also, when we do the full practice, we visualize ourselves being reproduced hundreds of thousands of times, and all these visualized bodies are doing the bowing. In some traditions, you'll be asked to do a certain set of bows, like 100,000 times or 10,000 times, And it's not only good for the health, it's good aerobics. People do find that their mind is changed by doing that, especially if we have resistance to, I'm not going to bow down to anything because I'm from California. That then maybe there's a bit of ego there, right? So then the offerings. I offer flowers, incense, light, perfume, food, music, and many other things, both in substance and with my imagination. I ask the noble assemblage to accept them. The approach to the Buddhas is not impersonal, and whether it is whether you happen to have an actual Buddha in front of you, or as most of us have just an image of the Buddha, we regard the image of the Buddha as if it were a person, and according to Indian tradition, the image is regarded as an honored a guest. So if somebody comes to your house, you don't ignore them, you welcome them in and you ask them if they have a cup of tea or coffee or something, and do they need to go to the washroom, and look after them in a certain way. The list of offerings here is a partial list, and then it says, and many other things. But they're the kinds of things that would be traditionally offered to an honored guest. We probably wouldn't especially give incense now if it's and light if it's carcinogenic, but we try to do something nice for them, right? And both in substance and with my imagination. If you have the time and the money and the space, and you have an altar and you have a temple and you put all these things out on the altar. Then if you don't have all of the substances, you can have bowls which you fill with water, and you visualize them as these other things. And if you don't have that, you visualize the whole thing. It isn't expensive to be a Buddhist. I've been getting some brochures in the mail about aids to meditation, and they're very elegant, sitting stools and incense holders, and it's very expensive to be one of these. You don't need to have designer incense burners and so forth. You can visualize everything. Doesn't cost anything. So don't get upset. Don't get hoodwinked by these people. And when we visualize, we can do better, because we can have hundreds of thousands of offerings. We don't just have a few. And you offer all the nice things of the universe to the Buddhas. Coming from the Christian tradition, I remember asking a Tibetan teacher, should we offer the Buddha our sufferings? Because in the Christian tradition, offering your sufferings up to God is a big thing, and there's a certain reason for that in the Christian tradition, which I won't go into now. It makes sense in the Christian tradition, and it's not as bad as it sounds. But when I asked this, the Tibetan teacher was very puzzled and said, "Why would the Buddha want our sufferings?" Because it's not dealt with in the same way. You offer all the nice things. What would be wonderful things to offer? And also offering things that you really like, that you give them away. The practice of dana, or giving, is a very powerful practice, and it's very easy to do, because we all have something we can give. If we're rich, we can give money. If we're not rich, we can give time. We can give our attention to somebody, and we maybe have some little thing we can give. And giving something is a way of releasing our hold on it, and it's a way of releasing our hold ultimately on our ego and our sense of I'm the most important person in the world. The most obvious place where that is happening is on the road, because when we get into a car, we're bigger, more powerful, and I'm the most important person on the road, and why are you in my space? Why are you in my lane? So if we can tone that down a bit and give something, and it's a very simple practice. It doesn't take a lot of intellect to figure that out. So we give as much as we can to the Buddhas, and if it is in substance, we can do that, or we visualize it, and ask them to accept the gift, which they will. I mean, there's no record of it not being accepted by the Buddhas. There have been examples where the monks have not accepted something. It's a bit of a footnote, but there is a way in which, if the monks in a certain country think that the government or the ruler is not performing in a moral kind of way, they can assemble in front of the palace. They have done this sometimes in the past, to receive the offerings from the kitchen of the palace. And then before the food has come out, they've turned over their bowls and walked away, which cuts the ruler off from gaining of merit, shows the ruler up as being inferior, and then he or she has to get organized. But this doesn't happen with the Buddhas. They always accept whatever we give. Then declaration of faults. Okay, now don't start to tune out, please. Don't stay with me here. This is not, I am a wretched sinner, and I am a worm, and I am no good. In Buddhism, there's no sin, because sin is an offense against God, and there's no God in Buddhism in the way that there is in the Abrahamic traditions. But there are faults. We all make mistakes. We all do things that are unskillful. We all do things that are supposed to help others, or help me at least. I mean, I'm always extremely good at doing things that help me, and then it offends others. It's difficult for others. So I have made mistakes in this life and in the past lives, which have led to difficulties in this life, and also led to the suffering of others. And I need to own up to that. I need to regret that, and get it out into the open and say, I confess all the evil. And evil is a simple word to use. It may carry some extra baggage to some of you, so you could say all the unskillful acts or something, if you like. All the evil actions that I have done, influenced by the defilements from time without beginning until now. The 5 that ripened immediately, the 10 non-virtuous acts, and many others. This is important, that it's influenced by the defilements. So I'm not guilty when I perform an unskillful action that harms me or others. I'm not guilty, but I'm responsible for that, for the effects of that. I am forced, in a sense, to do that, because my mind is not yet purified up to the level of a Buddha. Then I am going to act in ways that are confused, and because of the confusion, I'm going to do things that I think will help, but actually they don't help. So this is a way of not feeling. In Buddhism, we don't feel that we're guilty, but we are responsible for it. We can't say, well, it's my karma. I was forced to go into McDonald's and shoot all those people with the Uzi. It's my karma. Well, your karma may have forced you to do that, but you're responsible for that. You can't just say, well, that's it. Now stop that. Just stay there. Otherwise I can't read you. So, influenced by the defilements, and they're listed, of course, if we enter into detail, and then the 5 that ripen immediately, and the 10. There's a list of faults in Buddhism, and they're graded. Killing your father and mother, or a Buddha, killing a Buddha, oh, that's bad. That's really bad. Causing a dissension in the Sangha, making the Sangha split, so there's arguments, and then the Dharma cannot be properly taught. These are the big ones, sort of killing, murder, and whatever. One of them was brought out by Bob Thurman, if any of you went to hear him talk to the Commonwealth Club recently. He's always fun to listen to. He said one of the defeats of the Bodhisattva is destroying an entire city. And he said, I used to think, who would destroy an entire city? But then we had Fallujah. So what are we doing? One could be forgiven of thinking that the Bodhisattva precepts are not often discussed in the White House at the present moment. And I think it would be good if they were. Personally, yes. Then rejoice. Then we've got rid of the faults. We've got okay, that's out of the way. Got rid of all of the garbage. Now we go to rejoicing in virtue, because there's the other side of it. I rejoice in the merit of whatever virtue the Shravakas, Prajeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. That's different forms of Buddhists in the Hinayana and the Mahayana. I needn't go into great detail about those, but all kinds of Buddhists, all that they have done, and ordinary practitioners, that's us, gather throughout all the ages, all the three times. The news tends to report bad news when there seems to be no good news. As far as I know, as far as I'm aware, the Christian Science Monitor is the only piece of news media that does try to find good news and report on it. Most of the news, it isn't newsworthy. That's why we don't hear much about Buddhists, because most of the time we're pretty peaceful. We hear a lot about a certain kind of Muslim that's making a lot of trouble. Most Muslims don't do that, so we don't hear about them. So we must remember that the news that we see on television or get from other sources is very biased towards the negative, and it'll take us down if we don't realize there's a lot of very good people out there who are doing a lot of good stuff, and it's happened over the past, and it's happening now, and it will happen in the future. And we also can be on the positive side of things, and we can rejoice in that. So then the next section is requesting the Dharma, or the teaching. I pray for the wheel of the Dharma. That's the eight-spoked wheel of the Dharma is the symbol of the teaching, to be upturned. The teachings of the Mahayana and the Hinayana in ways suitable for the different aptitudes and motivations present in sentient beings. This means that one is asking the Buddhas to teach in all possible ways, in ways that will be suitable for all possible practitioners, individuals. I have often said that Buddhism is more like a therapy or a medicine than what we regard as a religion. Religion, as I've said, it's very useful in this country to have a religion because it has certain legal advantages, but from a philosophical view it doesn't make a lot of sense to call Buddhism a religion. It's more like it's in the business of trying to heal suffering, to remove suffering. So it's more like a therapy or a medicine. Now, I didn't make this up. This is a very ancient tradition in Buddhism, but I'm just emphasizing it because I think that approach to to Buddhism is very appropriate for our country today. That when we get upset about something, some of us will go to a priest, minister, or rabbi. Most of us will go to a psychotherapist. We want to go to somebody who will understand us and not to give us some kind of doctrine or something, and would understand us where we are. So, as there are, in the ideal situation, a physician or therapist would understand perfectly every disease and dysfunction and would know exactly what to do for each of them. And sometimes it'd be opposite. Put in a simple way, you can have constipation or diarrhea. There's laxatives and there's kaopectate. They're opposite. You've got to take the right one, and if you take the wrong one, it gets worse. Another way of saying it is, if the idea is to walk along a single path, some people would be wandering one way and the other. So some people are taught move to the left, others are taught move to the right, opposite. But it's what's needed to get in the middle there. So the teaching of the Dharma, when it's working properly, is very individual. In fact, it is said in some traditions, some Buddhist traditions, that when the Buddha spoke, everybody heard him differently. And everybody heard him speak at an elementary level, or an advanced level, or intermediate level, and speak in their own language. I can't do that. I have to kind of get in the middle and hope that you'll get it, and I just speak English most of the time. Sometimes I use some technical words. But that would be the ideal. If I could speak in such a way that everybody would hear me differently, in precisely the way that they need it for now. And if your native language is not English, that you'd hear it in your native language so it would hit home. And that's what we ask the Buddhas then to do. Oops, I can't see that. Then we request the Buddhas directly. This part is very, very Mahayana. I ask the Buddhas not to pass into nirvana, but with great compassion, and until samsara is completely empty, to look after all sentient beings who drown in this ocean of sorrow. In the Theravada, it is taught that after a Buddha has attained to become a Buddha, he kind of exists for a bit. It's sort of like, the idea is he passes into, at the moment of enlightenment, or full liberation, according to the Theravada, a Buddha passes into Nibbana, or Nirvana in the Sanskrit. And the Sanskrit word has come into English. The word in Pali has not. Passes into Nirvana, we'll say, but doesn't disappear. In Theravada, there are two sorts of Nibbana. There's the Nibbana with the basis remaining, which is the person is around still, and then with the basis disappearing, which is so-called death. So what happens sort of in that tradition is that the Buddha becomes a Buddha, and then it's kind of like he's driving along in a car, and the engine cuts out because there's no more gasoline, and that's the gasoline is kind of the intention to go on and do something and get it right ultimately, which leads to rebirth. But the fruiting of old karma is still going, so the vehicle is still moving with inertia, but eventually it slows down and stops, and then that is the final nibbana. After which the Buddha is said to be not in extinction. There's no Buddhist tradition that says Buddhas go into extinction. That was a serious misunderstanding of the early researchers in Buddhism over here. But it goes to somewhere about which we can say nothing. We cannot say whether the Buddha is extinguished or not extinguished, but they're not around. The Mahayana said something's wrong with this picture. If a Buddha has such ability to help so all the beings in the 10 directions and the 3 times, how could he possibly go away when there's still beings needing help? Doesn't that sound selfish? So they say that must have been just a trick that the Buddha did, and this is explained at length in the Lotus Sutra. It didn't really happen that way. He tricked people because some people thought, oh, have I really got to come back as a bodhisattva and go on for hundreds of thousands of millions of incarnations and save all the mosquitoes and stuff? I can't do that. So I said, okay, you just do a couple of lives and then you're out of here. Fine. But then he said, well, that's not the real teaching. That's just for the people who are exhausted and low. The real people get a real teaching that you are always available until no being is left that is suffering within samsara. So samsara is emptied. And so, but the thing is that the Buddhists might say, well, I'm out of here. Because the first Buddha, the Buddha of our continuum, space-time continuum, Shakyamuni, having got enlightened, is said to have looked around and said, well, nobody will understand this, so I'm out of here. But then the king of the gods came down to him and said, but there are some of us with little dust on our eyes, and if you speak to us, we will understand, and we need to hear your teaching. So that started him coming back, because since a Buddha is perfectly wise but perfectly compassionate, when you ask them to do something that will help you, their compassion is automatically brought into effect. It's an automatic effect, said to be something like that of the mother who has an only child and sees the only child going into danger, like maybe trying to go across the road in a busy intersection, and she immediately runs after the child and brings it back without even thinking about it. That's the automatic compassion of the Buddha. So once you ask a Buddha to teach, they're going to do it. They really can't help themselves in some way. Until there's no being left, the idea is emptying all of samsara. That the idea of Buddhism is that there should ultimately be no beings at all suffering. So the idea is to liberate all beings from all suffering forever. It's quite an ambitious plan. And I once said to a teacher, well, that's really pretty exhausting, coming back all this time. He says, well, it may seem that now, but if you get to a certain level in your practice, you forget about that. I think what happens is, as our practice develops, not only our wisdom and compassion becomes greater, but our energy becomes greater. And of course our view of time as going on endlessly into the future is changed, and we live more in the moment. So finally, distribution of merit. Very typically, a Buddhist activity starts with the taking of refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, those refuges which will really help us. We all go for refuge somewhere. When we're upset or troubled or frightened, we go to refuge for something. Around this time of the year we go shopping. And it sort of helps a bit to go shopping maybe, but it doesn't help ultimately. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha will ultimately help, but will help more than if we go shopping. Especially if we go shopping in the Toys R Us in New York, I think. And then we get sprayed with pepper. That was an odd thing. I think that must have been the Penguin who did that. I can only, it's the only explanation I can give. So then at the end, we've done something that probably has gained us a certain amount of merit. We don't know for sure, but probably it has. So then we don't keep this to ourselves, we give it away. A merit is not like money, really. Like it's a bit like money in that you can earn it. But then it's not like money in that if I have $2 and give you $1, I've only got $1. But it's more like emotions, like love or joy. If I have joy and I give it away, you have more. We have more. In fact, it's also like knowledge. Hopefully, at the end of this, I will have given away some of my knowledge, but I still have it, and you have it now as well. So we have more. So that's the way this works. Also, I get by the practice we get all this merit. May whatever merit I have accumulated become a seed for the enlightenment of all beings. I'm giving it away. Without delay, may I become a splendid leader for sentient beings. The seed for enlightenment is the bodhisattva, is the mind of the bodhisattva, the bodhicitta. May it help all beings to start on their own path of liberation. And then may I become a Buddha as fast as possible. Not because I've got a big ego and I want to be a Buddha, so I'm in charge of things and you're nothing, but because as a Buddha I can be more helpful than as an ordinary individual. And I've kept well within the time. Okay, so it's about 1:45, and we have time for questions. Yes.
I mean, this is speaking to my long-standing not getting Buddhism on a very deep level. It seems that, I mean, you can say it's not a religion, but this seems full of the same impulse that creates a body of faith, which I don't have a problem with, but it seems to have the same energies behind it that I would see in any other religion. I mean, I'm getting this sense of, maybe inaccurate sense of disingenuousness, that when you bow in front of Buddha, that there's not some worship impulse involved in that. I don't have a problem with that, but it just seems like what is a worship of a god in another tradition has a very similar tone or energy, as if it's an innate human impulse to worship that I see in Buddhism.
I don't think this. I personally don't have a problem with calling things a religion, except for the fact that, as it may surprise you, professors, scholars of religion, have tried consistently to come up with a definition of religion that we all agree with, and have failed. It would be an interesting exercise, which I don't want to go into now, to ask each of you to define what you think religion is. And then I'm quite sure I could bring up a contrary instance where something that is called a religion doesn't do that. So that's my only problem with the word religion as a definition. And I call Buddhism a therapy because a lot of people find religion puts them off. They don't want to do that because they think if they're going to worship a Buddha, they are a naughty little boy who's got to believe something that they don't believe, and that faith is coming to them without blind faith and so forth. And so I try to reframe that. But obviously, there's enough going on in Buddhism that is called a religion. There must be some reason why it's put into books called Religions of the World, and I was in the Department of Religion, and why Buddhism is called religion and not, marmalade or something. There's something about it that is like other things. Yes, and I don't have a problem with that. The only problem, as I say, with religion is that we don't know what it means.
Pardon? there's no expectations put here. There's no expectation if you do this, this is going to happen. That is something which I find in religions is always you have to do this because of that. Otherwise this will happen, or this won't happen, you won't go to heaven, you won't do this. But there's no expectation to express it, it just says do this.
I would like to say that if you have a problem with religion, if you don't like religions, don't call Buddhism a religion, and don't do the things that have a problem there, but do the things that you like, and then eventually you might find some difference with that. Because when people say religions do something, I mean, you just came up with something, and I'm not going to take the time to refute that. But there are so many instances where that is not the case of what's called religion, that each individual has this idea of what religion is, and if they don't like it, it's going to be a block to their practice. So if we go to the salad bar of the Buddha, and if we don't like beetroot, we don't have any, you see. We go to something else. And then eventually we might get around, I want beetroots also. Over here, I think there was
For me, what kept coming up for me is the similarity between this and the 12 steps in recovery programs, which I don't see as a religion, but does have the concept of higher power. The fourth step is moral inventory. The 11th step, the 12th step of once you finish the 11 steps, you then become kind of a teacher and so forth. And I feel really comfortable with that way of looking at it.
Yes, that is. Although the 12 steps, especially AA, began within a Christian concept, specifically within a context of German Lutheranism, the pietistic tradition, as it was brought to the USA, it very quickly tried to get out of that, and it uses the word God, but the best definition of God I've heard in 12-step programs is the only thing you need to know about God is that it's not you. And it's clear that wherever the universe came from and however it's functioning, it's not me that's in control of it. So something else is doing it. Whether it's personal or impersonal, I don't know. But so that's the connection I would see. Yes.
The definition of religion I kind of like is probably the original meaning of what it was in Latin, which even Joseph Campbell seemed to have missed. It used to be spelled with 2 L's, apparently. And the only derivation or source that might have probably come from would be the phrase rem legere, which means to read the matter, which it probably got from reading bird droppings in the old religion there. But that, I kind of like that, the idea of reading the matter, reading what is, just getting it. And that's a very general sort of thing. And it's also a way of saying, hey, let's not try to be too restrictive here about how one does this.
Yes.
That works pretty good.
Well, in that case, you seem to have be okay with the word religion, so you can use it. In the Roman Empire, a religio normally referred to the public activities, which in the U.S. are similar to being patriotic and standing for the national anthem and honoring the flag and so forth. And you didn't have to believe all of that, but you had to go through the motions. And then your individual approach was called pietas, P-I-E-T-A-S, and that was, in a sense, now we call that spirituality. I sometimes think that the difference between religion and spirituality is that if you have a collection, it's a religion, you see. Although we do have a collection in some of the 12 step programs, but anyhow. Yes, anybody else? Oh, yes, over there.
I wondered if you'd say a little bit more about religion as a legal category in this country, because I think, obviously it's a huge topic, but particularly trying to maintain or cultivate spiritual practices in a colonialist context, particularly something like Buddhism that's non-Western. There's just
Well, I think that it is a legal question more than anything else, and I think I would defer to anybody who had legal training in this. It is a leg pull to say that we have division between church and state in this country. We have division between the civil religion and the individual religions. That's what we, or the individual pieties. And it is helpful to have that legal protection for individual belief. But then when the civil religion, which is patriotism, my country, right or wrong, the sacrament of which is war. This isn't totally my idea, incidentally. This was proposed by Ninian Smart, one of my teachers, in the Gifford lectures. When we have that exalted as the true religion, this is when we have a problem, I think. We need our administrators to take a good look at what they're doing with the freedom of religion, and what are they doing when they're saying, well, it's just to be American and have the flag and to kill people, that's what you should be doing. Yes?
Next question. Yeah, in your discussion, you talk about the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas that are present in the past, now, and the future.
Yeah.
Could you point to some that are in the present that you consider realized, the Buddhists and Bodhisattvas that we would be aware of?
The big distinction between the Theravada and the Mahayana is not, as often as the textbooks tend to say, whether you're compassionate to all living beings or not, whether you have the Bodhisattva vow or not. All Buddhist traditions speak of compassion to all living beings. And the fact that the Theravadins are supposed not to, but Mahayanas, is just a PR job, you see. If you're going to sell Fords, you say, oh, GM's a piece of junk. So that's really all that's going on there. The real distinction between Theravada and Mahayana is what the word Buddha means. And for the Theravada, it tends to refer to individual people, of whom there is only one in a world cycle, although others, such as it was Ajahn Chah in the Thai tradition, who passed recently, everyone said he was a very high person. There was something very special about him. And the king and queen of Thailand went to his funeral. Now that says a lot in the Thai culture. He was a very special person, and a lot of his texts in English now. There's a big fat book of his teachings that you can read. Sometimes his name is spelled C-H-A or C-H-A-H, and the word Ajahn is just teacher before that. But then in the Mahayana tradition, the word Buddha is broadened, so it takes on a kind of tradition of the cosmos. It's almost like the cosmos is a Buddha. And those with sight, with the true sight, can look at a speck of dust and see within that speck of dust are hundreds of thousands of Buddhas on lotus thrones preaching the Dharma. So everything is Buddha.
Thanks, Roger. I know that Avi and some other people have some questions, and Roger usually is willing to answer questions. So maybe you can stay in here for a second, Roger, to see if people want to come up to you.
And also I'll be going for lunch, I guess.
And then he's going for lunch, too.
And then you can come to the second
Second zone. Yeah, today
showing
we're having,
this afternoon.
so thank you. We have announcements, and one of them is we have the newsletter mailing and also the annual fundraiser letter mailing. So if you ever thought, gee, it'd be nice to do a little bit of service for this fellowship, today might be a good day to think about that. And I'd like to thank the pair of Michaels, Michael Langdon and Michael Gebert, who, did I put your...
Yes.
What is it? How do you pronounce your last name? Gable. There we go. Because I know for a fact that they worked very hard to get this here today. Thanksgiving vacation notwithstanding.
And I think it has an article by me in it this week.
Stick
So
around
you can
this
get
letter.
more of me. Wow.
You read it first here.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, if I can supplement that, because I'm supposed to be the ringleader in getting it nailed out, it's kind of our GBF quilting bee, I think. Sit around and fold and label and stamp. And this time it's sort of a double effort because we have this. Normally the newsletter is not that numerous because a lot of people get the email version. Now, but we also have our annual fundraising letter, and that's a sort of separate task, and I'd actually like to keep them separate. And if we can get a nice bunch of volunteers, we can sit in both seating areas out there, and one group can fold and stamp and label and stuff newsletters, and some can do the fundraising letters. That would be a real help. And that we'll start just after a few minutes after we have tea. Thank you.
Other announcements, Jim?
Yeah, also there'll be a sign-up sheet. I know that some gentlemen here are for the first time. If you'd like to get on our email list and our mailing list so you can get these special mailings, we would like to have your addresses if you would like us to be able to reach you. So that's out by the town.
Okay, Carl?
Namaste. I have an announcement. And please indulge, I thank you in advance for indulging me and my fiery personality as I go through this. This is my Thanksgiving notice. And these are also announcements of gratitude, confession, and my truth. First, I am grateful for the three refuges of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. To this Sangha, to which I put so much trust in, I apologize for not keeping that trust in you in a time of deep emotional conflict last week. But to say for me represented harm and suffering for at least one person. I'm sorry for my skillfulness and any harm that I've caused to anybody. It is not my intention to hurt or harm anybody. Especially to June Stockton. I'll return my feelings of gratitude. I am grateful for June Stockton. It is to you, Jim, I'm grateful for ultimately leading me on a path that led me to this song. I'm grateful to this and all of the other gifts that you have given to me. To you, I'm sorry for the disrespect that I showed to your devotion. I realize that in tearing your tantric symbol of devotion from your body is the type of action that starts wars in this world. I am not for war. I stand for peace and for love. I would like to thank all of those people who, through their compassion, their listening, and their hugs, who have offered me comfort. And lastly, I'm especially grateful to those who have offered me comfort and healing, and in doing so incorporated deeply loving sexual pleasure to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Are there any other announcements? Peter?
On the host today, for people who haven't been here before, we have some cookies and some hot water. We have questions about what we're doing, feel free to approach me. Also, we need another volunteer to be a roster of hosts. It's something that happens only once every 2 months, and if you can do that, talk to me afterwards.
This is just marathon month for post-meeting activity. Next Sunday, there will be a group of volunteers who are going to do mailings to prisoners of letter. I think there's a form letter. But anyway, Don Weepert will be here to organize that. And some of you expressed interest when he was here speaking, and anyone else who might be interested in doing, a little bit of effort to reach out to the prisoners who are so hungry for spiritual enlightenment, then that would be a good opportunity to do it. And then the following Sunday, December 12th, is the steering committee meeting, and everyone in the Sangha is encouraged to attend, to have their input to how they would like to see what they would, comments on what's ongoing in the Sangha, and comments on suggestions for the Sangha. That's it. Okay, so we'll go in join in the circle, and Roger will lead us in the closing.
It seems like it's going to be the mailing party out there. Maybe I will remain in the room for those who have questions afterwards. That might be an easier way of doing things. By the merits of this practice of listening and teaching, may all beings be separated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings be joined to happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings dwell in equanimity with those who are near and those who are far. May all beings find peace, joy, and freedom. Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.